In the heart of a post-pandemic world still shaking off economic uncertainty, one artist stepped onto a stage in Arizona and ignited a phenomenon that rippled far beyond the music charts. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour didn't just draw crowds, it transformed entire cities into economic powerhouses. With hotels booking solid, airlines hiking fares, and local businesses raking in millions overnight. By the time the final notes echoed in Vancouver last December, it had shattered every record in the books, grossing over $2 billion and proving that in 2025, a single performer's pull could outpace market forecasts and even influence inflation reports. Yet this is only the beginning of how Swift has repeatedly bent the industry to her will. From turning a live spectacle into the highest-grossing concert film ever, to claiming every slot in the Billboard Hot 100's top 10 with one album drop. Her moves have sparked debates among economists, chart watchers, and cultural critics alike. Was it sheer fan devotion, strategic brilliance, or something more, a shift in how we value entertainment in tough times? Some see a savvy businesswoman empowering artists. Others question if such dominance crowds out emerging voices. Today, on Starlight Remains, we break down the 5 pivotal moments that turned Taylor Swift into an unstoppable force, examining the hard numbers, the global impact, and the lingering questions they raise. You'll gain a clearer view of why her success isn't fleeting hype, but a calculated evolution that's reshaping pop culture and commerce. Along the way, we'll explore the triumphs, the trade-offs, and what they reveal about stardom today. Stay with us by the end. You might see your favorite playlists and the world around them in a whole new light. March 17th, 2023. Glendale, Arizona. The sun dips behind State Farm Stadium as 69,000 fans, many in sequined cowboy hats, red scarves, and glitter-dusted cardigans, stream through the gates. Phones light up the night like a constellation, and the air hums with a single name. This is not just the opening night of a tour. It is the ignition point of an economic and cultural earthquake that will rumble for the next 21 months. When Taylor Swift strides onto the stage in a cascade of rhinestones and launches into Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince, she is not merely performing. She is launching a movement that will rewrite the ledger of live entertainment and leave cities, airlines, hotels, and even central banks scrambling to keep up. By the time the final curtain fell in Vancouver on December 2024, the Eras Tour had played 149 sold-out dates across 20 countries on 5 continents. Pollstar's year-end reports, verified by Swift's own production team, peg the gross at just over $2 billion in primary ticket revenue, alone more than double Coldplay's 360 Degrees tour, the previous record holder. Average ticket price $204. Total attendance roughly 10 million. Those numbers are staggering on their own, but they only tell half the story. The other half is written in hotel occupancy rates, restaurant receipts, and the astonished footnotes of Federal Reserve reports. Take Chicago, for example. 3 nights at Soldier Field in early June 2023 generated an estimated $140 million in direct visitor spending, according to Choose Chicago, the city's tourism bureau. Hotel revenue for the metro area that month surged past $308 million, its strongest performance since the pre-pandemic summer of 2019. Denver's 3-night stand in July delivered a similar jolt. Visit Denver calculated a $140 million infusion, fueled by out-of-state fans who snapped up everything from $20 friendship bracelet kits to $63 Eras Tour donuts at local bakeries. In Philadelphia, the Federal Reserve's Beige Book, an otherwise dry compilation of regional economic anecdotes, singled out Swift's May shows for producing the city's highest hotel revenue month since COVID struck. Economists at Question Pro went further, estimating that the tour's total economic impact, including secondary spending, exceeded $4.3 billion worldwide, enough to eclipse the annual GDP of 50 sovereign nations. The phenomenon even earned its own portmanteau Swiftonomics. In Stockholm, where Swift played 3 nights in May 2024, Sweden's largest bank, Danske Bank, measured a 0.2 percentage point uptick in the city's consumer price index, directly attributable to concert-related demand. Singapore, which secured exclusive Southeast Asian dates through a reported government incentive package, saw its first quarter 2024 GDP growth revised upward by 0.02% again, explicitly linked to the tour. Airlines rerouted planes, added charter flights, and watched load factors spike. American Airlines reported its busiest domestic weekend of the year, coinciding with Swift's Los Angeles residency. Small businesses pivoted overnight. Nashville coffee shops sold lavender haze lattes. Tampa barbers offered Eras Tour haircuts complete with temporary glitter roots. The ripple was relentless. None of this happened by accident. Swift's team bypassed the traditional promoter model, negotiating directly with venues and retaining an unusually high percentage of ticket revenue. Merchandise, another $200 million, flowed through her own online store and stadium pop-ups, cutting out middlemen and feeding a direct-to-consumer pipeline that kept profit margins fat. Critics who once dismissed her as a savvy marketer watched in silence as she turned nostalgia into capital. Packaging 13 years of catalog into a 3-hour retrospective that felt less like a concert and more like a communal pilgrimage. Yet for every triumph, shadows lingered. The November 2022 pre-sale meltdown at Ticketmaster, 14 million users crashing servers, dynamic pricing. Pushing face value tickets into the 4-figure range sparked congressional hearings and a Justice Department antitrust lawsuit against Live Nation. Scalpers used bots to hoover up inventory. Legitimate fans were shut out or forced onto secondary markets where prices topped $10,000. Swift herself posted a rare public statement on Instagram stories, calling the episode excruciating and vowing to explore new distribution models. The fallout forced policy changes, caps on dynamic pricing in several states, expanded verified fan protocols, and a broader reckoning with how monopoly power distorts access to culture. In the end, the Eras Tour did more than move money. It moved people. College students maxed out credit cards for flights. Parents dipped into savings to give their teenagers a memory. Cities that hosted multiple nights reported measurable drops in petty crime during show weekends. As police resources shifted to crowd control and local residents stayed home to avoid traffic. Sociologists noted a surge in intergenerational bonding, mothers and daughters trading friendship bracelets, grandmothers rediscovering love story alongside Gen Z converts. The tour became a post-pandemic exhale, a collective release valve for a world that had spent years locked down and logged off. As the house lights came up in Vancouver and 10 million voices fell silent. One truth crystallized: Taylor Swift had not simply staged the highest-grossing tour in history. She had engineered a living case study in how culture, commerce, and community intersect when one artist commands absolute trust. The stage was dark, but the aftershocks were only beginning. And when those lights dimmed for good, Swift had one more surprise up her sleeve. she took the entire spectacle to movie theaters, turning a fleeting live event into a permanent cinematic artifact that would reach millions more who never scored a ticket. October 13th, 2023, a Friday the 13th. That felt anything but unlucky for movie theaters across North America. Lines snake around city blocks in Los Angeles, New York, and suburban multiplexes alike. Teenagers in handmade Junior Jewels t-shirts stand shoulder to shoulder with middle-aged parents clutching printed-out lyrics. Inside the lobby of the Grove's AMC, the concession stand has swapped its usual popcorn buckets for glitter-dusted Eras Tour versions, complete with a light-up wristband. The film hasn't even started, and the energy is electric. This is the premiere of Taylor Swift: The Eras Tour, a 2-hour and 45-minute distillation of the live juggernaut that had already rewritten the economics of touring. What unfolded over the next few months would prove that Swift's reach extended far beyond the stadium walls. She had just invented a new revenue stream that Hollywood itself hadn't seen coming. The decision to film the concert was born of necessity as much as vision. By August 2023, the Eras Tour had already sold out every announced date, leaving tens of millions of fans on wait lists or priced out by resale markets. Swift and her team quietly dispatched director Sam Wrench to SoFi Stadium in Inglewood for the final 3 Los Angeles shows. Using 35 cameras and a crew that worked in near secrecy, they captured every costume change, every acoustic surprise, every roar of recognition when the opening chords of Cruel Summer hit. The edit trimmed the live show's 3+ hours down to a brisk 165 minutes, excising only the moments that relied on in-person spectacle confetti cannons, stage dives while preserving the emotional spine, the seamless transitions from Lover's pastel daydream, Reputation's industrial edge, the hush that fell over 70,000 people during the 10-minute All Too Well. What set this project apart from every concert film before it was the distribution playbook. Swift bypassed the major studios entirely. Instead, she struck a direct deal with AMC Theaters, the largest chain in the country, allowing AMC to handle bookings and ticketing while she retained creative control and a larger slice of the box office pie. Tickets went on sale September 1st at $19.89 for adults, a nod to her birth year and album title, and $13.13 for children and seniors. Within hours, AMC's website crashed under traffic that rivaled the earlier Ticketmaster debacle. The chain added showtimes, extended runs into weekdays, and even dusted off IMAX screens that had sat idle since the summer blockbusters faded. The payoff was immediate and historic. Opening weekend hauled in $92.8 million domestically alone. The biggest debut ever for a concert film and the second highest October opening of any movie that year, trailing only Joker, globally. The film crossed $261.6 million by early 2024, surpassing Justin Bieber's Never Say Never, which had held the crown for 13 years, and edging out Michael Jackson's posthumous This Is It, to claim the title of highest-grossing concert film in history. AMC reported that its fourth-quarter revenue jumped 26% year-over-year, with executives openly crediting Swift for the surge. Concession sales spiked too. Those light-up buckets sold for $20 apiece and became instant collector's items. Theaters themselves became extensions of the tour. Ushers handed out wristbands that synced to the film's light show. Audiences sang along in unison, traded friendship bracelets in the aisles, and turned post-credit lobbies into impromptu dance parties. For many, the cinematic experience offered something the live show could not: accessibility. A family of 4 in rural Ohio could spend $80 on tickets and snacks instead of $2,000 on travel and resale stubs. Grandmothers who had never set foot in a stadium discovered the catalog through their granddaughters and left humming Shake It Off. Box office analysts noted a demographic anomaly: 35% of opening weekend ticket buyers were over 45, a cohort that rarely turns out for music documentaries. The ripple effects reached deeper into the industry. Swift's direct-to-theater model exposed how much profit studios typically skim from distribution fees. Rumors pegged her take at upward of 50% after venue splits. Independent chains grumbled about being frozen out of the initial rollout. And some theater owners whispered that AMC had offered Swift favorable terms in exchange for the exclusive. The arrangement prompted a quiet reevaluation among artists. Why cede control to a studio when a single phone call to a theater chain could yield similar results? By January 2024, AMC announced it would expand its artist direct pipeline, citing the era's film as proof of concept. The story didn't end with the theatrical run. On March 14, 2024, Swift's 34th birthday week, Disney Plus premiered Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour Taylor's version. An extended cut that restored 5 acoustic performances, including the live debut A Cardigan and a soaring Death by a Thousand Cuts. The streamer reported that the title became its most-watched music film ever within the first 3 days, drawing an audience split almost evenly between the United States and international markets. A separate rental window on platforms like Amazon and Apple kept revenue flowing, while the physical 4K Blu-ray release in December 2024 sold out its first pressing in 48 hours. Critics praised the film's technical polish. Wrench's editing kept the pace breathless without sacrificing intimacy. But some reviewers argued it flattened the live experience, turning 70,000-person catharsis into a polished product. Fans countered that the movie democratized the tour, allowing global audiences in countries the era's roadshow never reached to participate in the cultural moment. Either way, the numbers were indisputable. The film generated an estimated $100 million in profit for Swift and her partners, a figure that dwarfed most traditional music documentaries and rivaled mid-tier studio releases. As the credits rolled on the extended Disney Plus cut, a postscript teaser flashed footage from the Vancouver finale, confetti still drifting like snow. The caption read simply, "The end of an era." Coming December 2025. Rumors immediately swirled of a second theatrical release, this one stitched from the tour's closing nights and packaged with behind-the-scenes documentary footage. If the first film was about capturing lightning, the sequel promises to dissect the storm, how it was built, who powered it, and what it cost. In bottling the unbottlable, Swift didn't just extend a tour. She created a new template for artist-driven content in an age of shrinking attention spans. The Eras Tour film proved that spectacle could scale, that fandom could be monetized without alienation, and that sometimes the best way to keep a moment alive is to let millions more live it for the first time. The lights may have dimmed on the road, but on screens large and small, the era was only just beginning to echo. And echo it did straight onto the charts, where Swift would soon pull off an even more audacious feat, claiming every single spot in the Billboard Hot 100's top 10 with one midnight drop. October 21, 2022. Midnight Eastern Time. A simple Instagram post. Taylor Swift in a fuzzy cardigan, eyes wide. Caption reading, "Meet me at midnight," sent the internet into a controlled frenzy. 3 hours later, the album. Midnights materialized on every streaming platform. 13 sleek tracks that blended synth-pop shimmer with late-night confessions. By sunrise, the machinery of modern music consumption had been hijacked. For the first time in 64 years, A single artist occupied every position in the Billboard Hot 100's top 10. The last time it happened, Drake managed 9 in 2021. Before him, the Beatles in 1964. Swift didn't just break the glass ceiling, she replaced it with a disco ball. The chart, dated November 5, 2022, reads like a victory lap. Anti-Hero debuts at number 1. Its self-lacerating chorus, "I'm the problem. It's me," already echoing in dorm rooms and minivans. Lavender Haze slides into 2. Maroon at 3. Snow on the Beach, featuring Lana Del Rey, at 4. The list descends through Midnight Rain, Bejeweled, Question, You're on Your Own, Kid, Karma, and Vigilante Shit. Each entry a different shade of insomnia and introspection. No other act appears until Drake's Holdover. Rich Flex limps in at 11. Billboard's methodology streams. Sales. Airplay had never been stress-tested quite like this. First-week numbers tell the physical side of the story. Midnights sold 1.13 million album units in the United States, the biggest opening since Adele's 25 in 2015. Vinyl accounted for 575,000 of those, more than any title since tracking began in 1991, pushed by 4 collectible color variants and a signed edition that vanished from her web store in minutes. Target's exclusive lavender marbled pressing sold out its 500,000-unit run before noon on release day. CD sales, often written off as relics, hit 395,000, buoyed by Swift's decision to bundle digital downloads with physical copies. In a streaming-dominated market, these figures felt almost retro, a deliberate flex of analog loyalty. The digital surge was equally surgical. Spotify confirmed. Midnights broke the record for most streams in a single day by any album, surpassing 180 million global plays. Apple Music and Amazon reported similar spikes. The surprise 3AM dropped 7 additional tracks, dubbed the 3 AM edition. Added fuel without warning, turning a complete album into an evolving event. Hits Different, a bonus cut exclusive to certain physical editions, still managed to chart at number 20 based on sheer curiosity streams. Swift's team had learned from the re-recording rollout scarcity breeds demand, but controlled abundance keeps the conversation alive. Globally, the takeover mirrored the domestic one. Anti-Hero reached number 1 in Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and a dozen other territories. In the UK, it became her second chart topper of the year after Carolina. TikTok became the unofficial marketing department. Users dissected the sexy baby lyric from Anti-Hero, recreated the album's clock face cover with household objects, and turned Bejeweled into a makeup tutorial soundtrack that racked billions of views. Radio, often the bottleneck for pop longevity, bent to the pressure. Anti-Hero logged the fastest climb to the top of the radio songs chart since Adele's Easy on Me. What made the sweep possible wasn't just volume, it was velocity. Billboard's rules weight streams heavily. 1 to 500 on-demand plays equal 1 album sale. Swift's fan base, conditioned by years of Easter egg hunts and surprise drops, treated the release like a civic duty. Playlists titled Midnights on Repeat proliferated. Group chats coordinated listening parties across time zones. The algorithm rewarded engagement, pushing the songs higher, which in turn drew casual listeners who wondered why their For You page had turned midnight blue. The milestone carried historical weight. Swift surpassed Madonna for the most top 10 Hot 100 entries by a woman 40 in total, and tied Ariana Grande for the most simultaneous number 1 debuts by a female artist with 5. On the Billboard 200, Midnights marked her 11th #1 album, pulling her even with Barbra Streisand for the most among women. Critics who had questioned whether the re-recording project diluted her momentum watched in silence as the new material outsold the Vault tracks by a 3-to-1 ratio in week 1. Yet the dominance invited scrutiny. Industry watchers asked whether superfans' gaming streams distorted the chart's reflective power. A single dedicated listener playing Karma 50 times in a day contributed more than a radio spin heard by thousands. Billboard adjusted its bundling rules in 2020 to curb merchandise-driven sales. But streaming remained a gray area. Some artists grumbled privately that the Hot 100 had become a fan vote popularity contest. Others saw it as evolution proof that direct artist-to-audience bonds now outweigh traditional gatekeepers. Swift herself seemed aware of the tightrope. In a rare post-release interview with Apple Music, she described Midnights as a collage of intensity, highs and lows and ebb and flow, insisting the music came first. The chart sweep, she said, was a beautiful accident, whether accident or architecture. The result was undeniable in a fragmented listening landscape where attention scatters across playlists and 15-second hooks. One album had forced the entire industry to look up at the same time. The afterglow lingered. Anti-Hero spent 8 weeks at #1, the longest reign of Swift's career, by Grammy night in February 2023. Midnights had already sold over 6 million equivalents worldwide. The vinyl boom it triggered kept pressing plants running triple shifts. Independent record stores reported their strongest fourth quarter since the 1990s. For an artist who began the decade fighting to own her masters, the takeover felt like poetic punctuation proof that creative control, when paired with an army of invested listeners, could still move the needle in ways no algorithm could predict. As the final notes of Mastermind faded from bedroom speakers and car stereos alike, Swift had done more than colonize the charts. She had reminded a skeptical industry that depth and devotion could still outrun distraction. The board was hers, but the game was far from over. Because if one midnight could rewrite the Hot 100, imagine what 10 minutes could do to the very idea of a hit single. November 12, 2021. Just past midnight, Taylor Swift's website refreshes, and Red Taylor's version. Flood streaming services. 30 tracks, including 9. From the vault songs never heard before, buried at number 30 is the one everyone has been whispering about for years. All Too Well. 10-minute version. Clocking in at 10 minutes and 13 seconds, it is not a remix or an extended club cut. It is a director's cut of Heartbreak. Every verse, bridge, and whispered aside, restored from the cutting room floor of the original 5-minute single. Within hours, the song is not just trending, it is ascending the Billboard Hot 100 like a slow-burning fuse, finally detonating at #1 on the chart dated November 27th. In doing so, it eclipses Don McLean's American Pie as the longest track ever to top the list, a record that had stood untouched for half a century. The ascent was engineered with precision. Red Taylor's version sold 605,000 copies in its first week, pushing the 10-minute version to 1.14 million equivalent units when streams and airplay were tallied. Spotify logged 90 million plays in the first 7 days. Apple Music crowned it the biggest female song debut in platform history. But numbers only sketch the surface. The real propulsion that came from a 15-minute short film Swift wrote and directed herself, released simultaneously on YouTube, starring Sadie Sink as the wide-eyed younger woman and Dylan O'Brien as the older, elusive partner. The film unfolds like a memory reel crimson leaves in upstate New York. A red scarf left in a drawer. A tense Thanksgiving dinner where the age gap hangs unspoken. The visuals sync so tightly to the lyrics that fans paused frame by frame, mapping every glance to a verse. By Monday, the video had 50 million views. By year's end, it crossed 200 million. The timing was deliberate theater. On November 13th, Swift appeared on Saturday Night Live, not as musical guest, but as the evening's sole performer, taking the stage at 12:13 a.m. Eastern to deliver the full 10-minute rendition. The studio audience, primed by the film's premiere hours earlier, sang every restored line the "Fuck the Patriarchy" keychain, the sister's wedding speech, the devastating closer about a scarf that still smells like you. NBC's late-night slot guaranteed the performance hit streaming highlights at dawn, fueling another wave of streams. Social media timelines filled with side-by-side comparisons. The 2012 Red single versus the uncut epic. Hashtags hat all too. Well 10 and hash the scarf trended for weeks. Critics who once dismissed Swift's re-recording project as nostalgia mining watched the cultural tide shift. The song earned a Grammy nomination for Song of the Year, the first time a track longer than 7 minutes had been shortlisted in that category. Rolling Stone slotted it at number 69 on its updated 500 Greatest Songs list, praising its novelistic detail. Guinness World Records certified the Hot 100 feat. Even the Library of Congress added the short film to its National Film Registry conversations. What began as a contractual obligation reclaiming masters sold without her consent had morphed into a masterclass in narrative expansion. Radio, long the gatekeeper of pop length, bent under pressure. Program directors who typically capped songs at 4 minutes programmed the full version in overnight blocks, then daytime rotations when requests flooded in. Clear Channel stations reported all too well. 10-minute version as the most added track to adult contemporary playlists in its debut week. The gamble paid off. It spent 3 weeks at number 1 on the adult pop airplay chart, proving that emotional investment could override format clocks. Yet the triumph carried tension. Some programmers argued that 10-minute runtime squeezed slots for new artists. Others noted that streaming's on-demand nature had already eroded radio's old rules. Fans, meanwhile, debated the song's real-life muse. Jake Gyllenhaal remained silent, but his 2010 birthday fell on the lyric's infamous 21 line, and the scarf became late-night punchlines. Swift never confirmed names, but the specificity invited dissection. Was this catharsis or calculated mythology? The short film's closing text, based on a true story, left the question hanging. For Swift, the victory was twofold. First, artistic, she had proven that vulnerability at scale could command attention in an era of 15-second hooks. Second, strategic, every stream and sale funneled revenue to her, not the former label that owned the original master. The re-recording campaign, launched to regain control, now doubled as a cultural reset. Red Taylor's version became the year's second best-selling album, trailing only Adele, and pushed Swift past Elvis Presley for the most weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200 by a solo artist. The ripple extended beyond charts. Independent filmmakers cited the short as proof that music videos could function as standalone cinema. Film schools added it to syllabi alongside Scorsese's concert docs. Songwriters began pitching 8-minute demos, arguing that if Swift could land a 10-minute ballad at the top, the 3-minute rule was negotiable. Mental health advocates praised the track's unfiltered depiction of gaslighting and grief, turning bedrooms into impromptu support groups where listeners shared their own all-too-well stories. In the end, the song did more than break a record. It expanded the emotional bandwidth of pop. It reminded a generation raised on bite-sized content that sometimes the most powerful stories refuse to be edited down. The scarf may have been fictional, but the ache was universal. And as the final piano chord faded, Swift had not only reclaimed a piece of her past, she had stretched the present wide enough for millions to step inside. That act of expansion set the stage for her most enduring global accolade, a fifth IFPI Artist of the Year crown that would cement her not as a moment, but as a movement. February 20th, 2025. The International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. The closest thing the music world has to a United Nations of sales and streams, releases its annual Global Recording Artist chart. At the very top, for the fifth time in 11 years, sits Taylor Swift. It is her third consecutive win, a streak no one else has managed since the award launched in 2013. 17. The South Korean phenomenon takes second. Drake, still a streaming titan, lands third. In an industry where K-pop armies mobilize millions and hip-hop drops dominate playlists, Swift's victory feels less like a coronation and more like a quiet takeover, one built on poetry, persistence, and a fan base that treats every release like a civic event. The engine this time is the Tortured Poets Department, released April 19, 2024. The standard edition arrives at midnight. 2 hours later, a surprise second disc. The anthology adds 15 more tracks, turning a single album into a double-barreled confession. EFPI's final tally credits the project with 5.6 million global equivalent units across all formats, enough to sweep 4 separate year-end charts: overall albums, vinyl albums, streaming albums, and physical sales. No other title appears in more than 2 of those categories. In the United States alone, first-week sales hit 2.6 million, the biggest pure sales debut since Adele's 30 Seat. But the global footprint is what stuns. Japan moves 180,000 seats. Germany clears 120,000 vinyl units. Brazil's streaming numbers rival domestic pop stars. The album spends 14 weeks atop the Billboard Global 200, a chart that weights every territory equally. What separates this win from the previous 4: 2014 with 1989, 2019 with Lover, 2022 with Midnights, and 2023 on the strength of re-recordings is the depth of catalog activation. The Eras Tour, still thundering across continents during TTPD's rollout, acts like a time machine. Fans in Mexico City buy Speak Now Taylor's version on purple vinyl. Crowds in Munich queue for 1989 Taylor's version. Aqua pressings. IFPI's vinyl chart for 2024 lists 5 Swift albums in the top 20 TTPD at 1. 1989. TV at 3. Midnights at 7. Folklore at 12. Lover at 19. Industry-wide vinyl sales rise 20% year over year, and pressing plants in Tennessee and the Czech Republic cite Swift orders as the reason they finally clear backlogs from the COVID crunch. Streaming tells a similar story of endurance. TTPD racks 2.9 billion on-demand global streams in its first 6 months, but the back catalog surges in tandem. Cruel Summer, a 4-year-old Lover track, re-enters the Global 200 Top 10 during the tour's European leg, propelled by stadium sing-alongs captured on fan phones. Spotify's Wrapped data for 2024 shows Swift as the most streamed artist in 142 countries, more than any K-pop act, more than Bad Bunny's Latin stronghold. Apple Music reports that users create over 1.2 million public playlists titled some variation of Taylor's Tortured Poets, each one seeding algorithmic discovery for casual listeners who stumble in and stay for the full discography. The IFPI methodology is brutal in its inclusivity. Every sale, every stream, every download from every corner of the planet counts the same. Swift's team leans into that democracy. Limited edition vinyl drops, chair-shaped foldouts. Manuscript replica sleeves sell out in minutes, but are restocked in smaller runs to keep secondary market prices from spiraling. A partnership with independent record stores in 42 countries ensures physical copies reach rural fans who might otherwise rely on spotty internet. The result is a win that feels earned across borders, not gifted by one dominant market. Economists have started calling it the Taylor effect. Record pressing facilities in Nashville add third shifts. A plant in France reopens a dormant line to handle European demand. Merchandise printers in Vietnam report Swift-related orders accounting for 30% of their 2024 revenue. Even central banks take note. The Reserve Bank of Australia cites concert tourism from the Eras stops as a factor in Sydney's unexpectedly strong retail quarter. The ripple is measurable, but it is also fragile. Independent labels worry that vinyl capacity swallowed by major artist variants leaves no room for debut pressings. Emerging acts from Nigeria to Norway complain that playlist real estate is now a Swift fiefdom. Swift herself seems attuned to the tension. In her IFPI acceptance video filmed on a simple soundstage, no glamour, she thanks fans in 7 languages and name-checks record store clerks in Lisbon and Jakarta. She never mentions competitors, but the subtext is clear: dominance is only sustainable if the ecosystem thrives. The re-recording project, still in progress, funnels royalties to her while keeping older albums in circulation. TTPD's surprise anthology tracks are priced into the original album on streaming, avoiding the paywall backlash that plagued deluxe editions in the past. Critics who once accused her of gaming the system now grapple with a different question. When does market share become cultural infrastructure? IFPI Chief Executive Victoria Oakley calls Swift the artist who redefines what global success looks like in the streaming age. Translation consistency compounds. 5 wins across 3 decades of format shifts. CDs, downloads, streams, vinyl revival prove that longevity is the ultimate flex. As the confetti settles on the 2024 crown, the bigger picture sharpens. Swift is no longer competing against peers. She is competing against the idea that pop stardom must burn bright and burn out. Her 5th EFPI title is less a trophy than a milestone on a longer road, one where every album, every tour stop, every vinyl groove is a brick in a catalog that refuses to gather dust. The world keeps spinning, new voices rise, but for now, the center holds. And somewhere in a bedroom in Sao Paulo or Seoul, a teenager hits play on Sanamusitsuko, the Tortured Poets Department, unaware they are helping write the next chapter of a story that began with a scarf and shows no sign of ending. From billion-dollar stages to silver screens, from chart monopolies to 10-minute epics, from midnight drops to a 5th global crown, Taylor Swift has not just taken the world by storm 5 times, she has become the weather system itself. As we trace the arc from those electrifying stadium nights that pumped billions into cities worldwide, through the cinematic capture that turned living rooms into communal arenas, the midnight chart sweep that silenced doubters, the 10-minute ballad that rewrote the rules of a hit. And finally, the global crown that no one else has worn 5 times, Taylor Swift emerges not merely as a performer, but as a force reshaping how we experience music, memory, and even money itself. Look closer, and the picture balances triumph with tension. Her strategies direct deals, surprise drops, catalog resurrection empower artists to claim their worth, yet they also spotlight gaps fans priced out of the frenzy. Newcomers jostling for airtime in a playlist galaxy she helps dominate. Is this the blueprint for sustainable stardom? Or a mirror reflecting an industry tilting toward the already immense? The evidence leans toward evolution. Her consistency lifts vinyl plants, streaming economies, and cultural conversations alike. Proving devotion can drive real change when paired with vision. What lingers is the human thread. Millions trading bracelets, decoding lyrics at 3 a.m., finding solace in songs that feel written just for them. Swift storms remind us that connection, at its best, outlasts the headlines. So tell us in the comments what moment from these 5 hit you hardest, and where do you see her influence heading next? If this journey through her world left you reflecting, give it a like. Subscribe to Starlight Remains for more stories that go beyond the spotlight, and tap the bell for our next dive into Hollywood's shifting tides. Thanks for spending this time with us until the next era. Keep listening closely.